why I joined an RPO. It's probably more why I've stayed at an RPO for the last 4 years, especially when you think, remember 2021 when the market was bonkers for recruiters and the recruiters were like the most in-demand talent on the planet.
Hey, we need to add 300 more growth heads than we were expecting. Like if a customer came to you and said that, you wouldn't say, yeah, well, we'll just do it on the exact same contract you're on now with the exact same people and it won't cost you any more. It's just, it will cost more and that's the reality.
So you're having to message 200 candidates, which takes a lot of time to get your return. How can we improve that to 15%, 20%, 30%? So you're doing less input and getting a better or the same output.
Lee, hey, welcome. Great to have you on the show, bud.
Cheers, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've crossed paths many times before, buddy, but never actually met until about last week, which is unbelievable. So yeah, long time listener, first time caller for me.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah, it's insane. It is insane. And yeah, why don't we start actually just a bit of an overview of your career, just for the listeners today. Your career, you've been on agency recruitment, you've had an analytics company, you've worked in-house, you've worked RPO, so certainly the full spectrum. But yeah, I would love to hear your journey.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm gonna use the cliche that most people use. I fell into recruitment. I left uni. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Saw a job ad in the job centre of all places. So this is how for a trainee recruitment consultant. I lasted in that job for about 3 months. It was HGV drivers, and I decided to leave the night I got the night phone. Standing in the kitchen, waking people up at 4 o'clock in the morning to see if they wanted to go in for 6 was not fun. So then I moved into tech recruitment, which is where I think my love affair with recruitment started. Did that for a while. Wasn't too bad at it, to be fair. I just didn't like BD. I just wasn't very good at it and didn't like it. So I left agency recruitment, potted around doing some different types of recruitment roles, mostly like recruitment marketing types of things. And then me and one of my mates I was working with, we had a decent idea for a business. So the business everyone today knows as Horsefly was originally called Jobs to Word. So we launched that. We managed to find an angel investor on LinkedIn, of all places. It wasn't quite Dragon's Den style pitch. It was more in a pub. But yeah, we got the funding for that. Managed to get some proper investment. Raised over £1 million, grew the business, and then I decided to leave, and it was probably more so. It was about 6 months after my daughter, and I was just, the life of an entrepreneur isn't for me anymore, because you are just always on. And I was grumpy at home. I was tired. It just wasn't for me. So I moved in house. Initially, it was meant to be a 6-month fixed term contract at Shop Direct. Now, was there 3.5 years. Loved it. Then I got approached by Talk, asking them to build their in-house function, because they were mostly RPO. But then at the same time, they were closing their London office and relocating like 400 tech roles up to Manchester. I was like, when am I ever going to get the chance to do that ever again? Those two things at the same time, I'm going to learn a lot. So did that, learned a lot, really enjoyed it. Then COVID hit, got made redundant like a lot of recruiters did. And then I got chatting to Kat at Joint Talent, where I still am now, almost 4 years later. The last 4 years, what a learning curve. I do everything from recruiter enablement, recruiter training, market intelligence. I do some consulting. I manage the internal TA function. Just learning a lot. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey. And the funny thing is I turned 40 last year. I'm probably only halfway through that whole career journey, aren't I? So I wonder what the next 20 odd years will bring.
Well, this is it. And they'll keep pushing the pension age up. So it could be, be another 30, beyond that. Hey, so ever does the market change? I think the variety is the spice of life, right? And when you're talking about your joint talent role in particular, we often talk about TA roles and how broad and diverse they are in terms of the areas that you cover, but you've added another couple of layers there. So yeah, what was it, I suppose, that we really attracted you to that role at the kind of tail end now of that period in recruitment, that you've had this kind of most recent?
Honestly, I'd never considered RPO. I was always in house, but then when COVID hit, there weren't a lot of people hiring recruiters, and you've got bills to pay, you've got family to feed. You kind of take what you can kind of get at the time, and as soon as I landed, I loved it. I think it's less about why I joined an RPO. It's probably more why I've stayed at an RPO for the last 4 years, especially when you think, I mean, remember, was it 2021 when the market was bonkers for recruiters, and the recruiters were like the most in-demand talent on the planet, and
Yeah.
I stayed. And it's the variety. You get so much variety. When you are in house, especially I think back to my days at the Berry Group. As much as I loved it, I was a tech recruiter, and you go in, you identify all the problems, you fix all the problems, and then you are just the ship is steady. You just sail. I like problems. I like fixing things. Otherwise, I get a little bit bored. But you definitely get that variety in RPO, especially in the role that I'm in, because I will lean into all of the different teams who got in different clients right across the world, all different types of companies, different verticals, different sizes, different challenges, and yeah, it's the variety of it all. It really accelerates your career because you're working with all of these different types of in-house teams in such a short period of. The only other way you'd get to do that would be if you were contracted.
Yeah, exactly. And you really are just given that opportunity to give that like eagle-eyed view, zoom right out and think about the context of the market as a whole, rather than just in your own world, moving at your own pace. Yes, you've got your challenges. Yes, you've got your stakeholders, but actually that's your little circle. Actually, there's so many overlapping areas, and the kind of context of the market is so crucial. And often RPOs are the most advanced resourcing teams have RPOs on site, right? Because of the data which they've got, because of that kind of broader learning understanding. So, no, really interesting. And I think, I suppose it lends itself as well to your own personal brand. And I think you're really building one within the marketplace, and certainly getting a lot of visibility. So yeah, maybe a piece on that, and like, how you've kind of built that journey, what you kind of see the roadmap looking like, and why it's important for your business and also, for yourself.
I kind of only started taking LinkedIn seriously when I moved in-house. And I don't know why it was that prompted me to start taking it seriously, but I did. One of the things I found when I started was I built my network, and I am learning from other people, because let's face it, right? When you're in-house, you get very, very little specific TA training. So your potential to grow and learn things is only as big as the TA team that you currently sit in. But theirs is also restricted as well by the size that, so they may all be brilliant, but you are still restricted by that internal view. Whereas when I started networking on LinkedIn, I started getting asked to go to events, or I'd start having conversations with people. I'd be learning stuff from people who were a million times better than me. You nick their ideas and you play them off internally as your own, with your own little spin on it. So that's one of the big reasons, because I'm quite introverted. I'm not the type of guy that will, at a networking event, rock up to a stranger, my name's Lee, shake the hand, what do you do? That's not me. So I do it on social. But then the other reason I think it's really important for recruiters is, switching jobs is a big deal, right? Candidates want to work with people they trust. So if you can, put your thoughts and your opinions out there, and, just show that you care about what you do, you're knowledgeable to some extent, I guess, and that, you're a pretty nice guy, then it's going to help, isn't it? So yeah, it was LinkedIn, and then I decided to start TikTok in
with
September.
dances as well, or
oh mate, you don't want to see me dance. But I've been lurking on TikTok for ages, just watching stuff, And originally, when I very first downloaded it, I deleted it after 5 minutes because I just didn't get it. It was just the crazy dances. I just didn't get it. And then I gave it another go, and I started understanding the type of stuff that I was interested in. So I was starting to see, like Power BI or data analytics or gardening, of all things, would be in my feed constantly. And then I started seeing a couple of recruiters talking on LinkedIn, on TikTok as well. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a go, because it might be massive. Who knows what the future will be? When LinkedIn first came out, everybody's like, well, why are you wasting your time on LinkedIn? TikTok could be the next big thing. It might not be, but I'd rather give it a go. And if it is the next big thing, then I'm ahead of the curve. If it's not, I've still had a laugh doing it.
Yeah. And it's part of like cutting through the noise as well. And I think, you're reaching different demographics, different audiences in different ways through different mediums. And, you touched on that 2021, that kind of absolutely crazy period for hiring in general for recruiters. Actually, we've been seeing the inverse of that over the last kind of 12 to 18 months. And you'll see that people that are really well networked, that have got a really strong personal brand, are able to kind of move from one position to another without necessarily going through the same kind of application rigmarole that many will need to go through, and, feeling the pain of not hearing back, and that kind of arduous process of applying. If you've got a really, really strong network and you're a trusted voice, you'll probably find opportunities coming to you. So, I think awesome.
Totally. My 3 jobs haven't been because I've applied for a job online. It's been via the network and knowing people.
And you touched on another point there as well, like on the data part. And obviously we were going to talk about data, given your background and given the company which you kind of co-founded before. It makes absolute sense. Probably not gardening while we're here, but gardening at a later date. We're coming around to the sowing the seed season. But when we think about data and like managing teams, building teams, like how do you use it internally first, and then maybe we'll think about that external lens as well. What does it look like internally?
Yeah, so I measure everything. I won't necessarily report on everything, but I will measure everything, because that tells me, what levers I need to pull on, or what questions I need to ask, or where I need to go and investigate. And it's, there's 3 main reasons for doing it, really. 1 is process improvement. 2 is to have my teams back. And 3 is to coach and guide the team. The classic example in the world of TA is hiring manager comes to the head of TA and says, I'm not happy with my recruiter, they've not done X, Y. You look at the data, and the data will tell you whether they have done X, Y, and Z. And if they haven't, they've done absolutely everything that they should have done, you can defend your team, and you can defend them with fact and with data. But then the other one, in terms of process improvement and coaching and whatnot, it's very little simple things. If you've got a recruiter who is working 40 rep and they are drowning, then you can look for all the little marginal gains throughout the process and the way they work that will stop them from drowning. A very little simple thing might be, your response rate on your outreaches to candidates is 5%. So you're having to message 200 candidates, which takes a lot of time to get your return. How can we improve that to 15%, 20%, 30%? So you're doing less input and getting a better or the same output. Same in terms of, the funnel in the recruitment metric. So why are you submitting 10 candidates when there's only 1 vacancy? You are wasting your time. You are wasting the hiring manager's time. You have to let down 9 candidates. Let's work more efficiently. And it's just looking for all those little tiny gains you can make throughout the process to improve things. And then the other reason is to advocate for your team and the value that they add internally. Because, in TA, if your team is doing a good job because there's no noise from the business, like you are left alone. Whereas when things aren't going so well, there's queues of managers at the desk, or there's emails flying in, or there's a big meeting about it. So if your team is doing well, you want to have the data and broadcast to the rest of the business. This is what the team's done. This is what they've achieved, and this is how data doesn't lie.
Yeah, and then I think what's really interesting in your business where you are at the moment is you can then compare from one organization to another and benchmark, right? Because it's all good looking at your own operational improvements, but contextualize, what does that look like? How are they doing against their peers, etc. And then the kind of other part there, you're talking about operational gains for the recruiter experience, for the hiring manager experience, for the business, but there's also that knock-on impact, right, on candidates with good quality messaging reaching them. That's the brand perception. That's how they're represented. So, yeah, marginal gains, absolutely critical. And then I suppose the other part, then you were talking on like coaching, like how could people practically think about using the data on their team, using those stages, and then what does that coaching program look?
Yeah, so I tend to use the data to look at what things do I need to coach the team on collectively, like what are the common themes that the data's telling me, but then also like at an individual level, to help them improve and get better in what they do. And you can look at the data sometimes, and I say data doesn't lie, but data also doesn't give you the answers. It almost tells you where to look. So you look at a particular person in the team. I'm going to use a really crude TA metric: time to hire. Your time to hire is 20% higher than everybody else's in the team. Why? And that's all the data is doing, is asking the question of why. And you go a step further and you break down the funnel metrics, but then that it enables the conversation. And you can look at the numbers and you can just assume it's a capability. But if you ask the recruiter why, then you might actually start unpicking a few things, and then you can then coach them through it. Yeah, that is the best way to do it. You look at the data, you look where the gains could be. If someone's not delivering or someone's not performing to the level that you think they should, and that's an entire different ball game. You'll often see things on LinkedIn like what should the optimal time to hire be in this type of role, or how many roles should a recruiter have? And it depends on the recruiter, the environment that they're in, the stakeholders that they're working with. You could put a tech recruiter into company A and give them any more than 5 roles and they'll drown. You put that same recruiter into company B, they might be able to take 20. So it's looking at the data in the context of everything. And you should only really target certain KPIs against where they are right now and where you think they should be, rather than you're not there, so let's beat you with a stick. It's finding out why, how you can help them get there.
And so it's part of that internal coaching piece, and coaching teams, coaching individuals, and looking at the data to guide it. But then equally, like you say, as you're unpicking it and you're going down the funnel and you're thinking, right, at this stage, okay, we've got an issue here with hiring managers, or we've got an issue with a technical interview, for example, where you're seeing a really, really disproportionate level of dropout. Actually, that's then replaying back to the business. So why don't we switch gear a little bit and think about, I suppose your view on using data, using market intelligence, just more generally for that kind of external informing the client, that kind of consultancy part of your role.
Market mapping, market intelligence is, it's where it's really useful for me, and I guess where it's quite a bit different than it was from my in-house days. So, LinkedIn Talent Insights is probably the main source that everybody uses. And, that gives you a really good view of the candidate market. What's the availability of talent? What's the average year's experience? Where are they based? What schools did they go to? All that type of stuff. But there's not a huge amount of data out there, especially on LinkedIn Talent Insights, about the companies and about the actual jobs. Now, I'm really lucky because we've got this really, quite broad client base that I get insight into stuff. And, obviously it's not data that we would ever share, but it helps me to, coach the teams, educate the teams so they can go and have meaningful conversations with their clients and their stakeholders. So it might be, a really basic example would be, right, you're looking for a Java developer in Berlin. You're asking for fully remote. Did you know if it was office-based, the average time to hire would be this? If it's fully remote, it would be that. And then you can have really meaningful conversations with stakeholders around, well, what should the strategy be for this role? Does it have to be in the office, or can it be fully remote? Or you can even, segment it and break it down by the size of the company. The average time to hire in this particular size company is this versus this in a smaller one. But it's not just time to hire. You can look at things like conversions throughout the funnel. You can look at the E&I metrics across different companies. You can look at the companies and you can look through the data and think, what, they have really nailed it. What are they doing right? And you look through the data and you tie all of that, that job or company data in with the candidate data that's probably a bit more freely available, and you cross, then that's pretty powerful to enable teams to have the right conversations. But then also have the right conversations with clients when they're asking for advice on, we're thinking of opening a hub somewhere else in the UK because we're in Manchester at the minute. We want to hire more software devs. Where in the UK should we open it? You do all the data, you cross-reference against what you've got internally as well. You say, actually, you shouldn't open a hub anywhere else. This is what you should do instead. And that's way more powerful than just jumping on LinkedIn Talent Insights and going, well, computer says London's got more candidates, so let's open up that.
No. And it doesn't also have like the desired data either, does it? Like, I suppose, plug from our side is one of the bits of data which we capture. It's like, actually, what's the other areas that you'd like to work? People might be based at a location, but they might want to work somewhere else. But I suppose that kind of broader thing that you're touching on there, that kind of strategic workforce plan of actually, well, we're looking to deliver this business objective. We need to hire X number of 100 software developers to do so. Well, actually, what degree of those need to be permanent? Would you look at entry-level talent? Would you look at development? What's the cycle of that? It's like, actually, would you look at contractor population? Would you look at offshoring, onshoring? Like, there's lots and lots of options. And I think, like you say, it's about being able to have that conversation at a leadership level where you're thinking about business objectives. But then you touched on something else, which I think it's a bit in vogue at the moment, and certainly like a really popular conversation, which is around recruiter enablement. Like, giving people the tools to be able to go back and have these sensible conversations and say, not just respond with, okay, I'll keep finding, I'll keep looking, I'll keep searching, but actually, hey, this is what's possible. This is what's realistic, and here's some scenarios. So yeah, I'd love to hear more on kind of recruiter enablement, what you're doing at the moment, what you see in the market.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been quite fortunate. I think it just goes to show that that JT must be trailblazers, because I got offered the enablement role internally about 2.5, 3 years ago now. So I've been doing it before it was quite popular and on trend. But for me, recruit enablement comes down to right tech stack, right tools, data and reporting and analytics, training and development. Training and development is huge in the world of enablement. And the way I like to view enablement is giving the teams the knowledge that they can deliver in any environment. So they could be in client A right now, where they've got all of the tools. They've got an amazing tech stack that they can work with. They've got our tech stack on top of that. They've got really good slick processes. They've got loads of employer branded content. Like, everything is set up for. But then if they come out and go into client B, and none of that exists, that they've got the knowledge, the capability to still thrive and do that regardless of the environment that they're in. And, I think I touched on it earlier, when you are in-house, you get very, very CA specific training. You will get things that everybody else in the business gets, Excel, L&D, or confident presenter. I think we've all been on those, but nothing dedicated to TA. So that is like a critical part of my role. Is it's upskilling and developing recruiters and enabling them to thrive no matter what type of environment they're in. But then also for the rest of their career as well. Giving them the knowledge, and it's one thing giving recruiters LinkedIn Talent Insights and say, right, this is how you run a report, fill your boots. It's a very different thing to say, right, here, what is it telling you? How would you present this to a stakeholder? What types of questions would you ask based on what you're finding? What would you recommend? Going back to the email example, your response rate's only 15%. What do you think we could do to get it to 40%, to 50%? If you give them the content, then that's going to work for where they're working right now. But on the next project, it's not going to work. And you have to constantly give rather enable them.
And it's curiosity, right? And I think RPOs, kind of their reputation lives and dies based on the recruiters that they're placing on site. One person's experience can be very, very different to somebody else's. And like you say, you're just picking people up and dropping them into new environments without necessarily providing them, with the, I suppose, versatility to stand up to different challenges and think about the problems, as opposed to kind of cookie cutter processes there. But on the other hand, I suppose you've also touched on like the tooling element of it and some of the kind of process trees. Like, how much does that carry from one organization to another? Do you see like kind of similar practice? Is it disparately different? Like, what does that look like on your side?
Most of them are largely the same. We've got this ATS that we've not fully optimized, that people aren't really using properly. We're really interested in this type of technology, so we're going to go and invest in this. We're going to put that into our tech stack. That's great. And we really want this as well, so we're going to invest in that. We're going to pull that in. We're going to build up all of this technical debt because nobody's used those two new things that we've brought in because, one, we've not trained them on it properly. Two, we've not figured out, we've not got the buy-in to use it. We've not figured out the benefits of it. And then we've just realised that our ATS actually had the capability to do 90% of those two things that we've just invested in. We've just not unlocked it or enabled it. And I think that's pretty representative of most tech stacks that I've looked at or I've seen. And a lot of the processes are very, very similar as well. And most of them, you can get a lot of marginal gains from them with some very, very easy, quick fixes. I think what we've done as a TA industry over the years is we've over-engineered it all. Hiring really can be quite simple. If you strip it back to the absolute basics, it can be quite simple. Whereas now it's, well, we need an ATS, we need a CRM, we need 3 different types of assessment tools, we need 3 different onboarding providers, we also need these 3 different background checking companies. I even met one company in fair play. They're they're a global company. There's 4 ATSs.
Yeah. I've known one with 7 before that rolled into a global workday at the end of it, and it becomes those kind of regional challenges, right? You talk about the data and running through and seeing where your problems are. It becomes a regional challenge, and a regional leader will buy a regional tool because they're saying we've got this problem, but hey, we've identified something that can fix it. And often technology feels like the quickest route to these problems, because in many cases it is, but in many cases it can also convolute the actual process. And it's either people, process, or technology that you're going to change in order to instigate something significant within an organization when we think about commercial impact. But yeah, I think the piece which you said at the very start, there's probably everybody listening thinking, well, my ATS isn't optimized exactly the way that I want it to be. I think they take a hard knock ATSs though, because ultimately it's on the individuals, it's on the organizations to optimize and make sure that it's working and fit for purpose, and thinking through actually what's the net impact of what we're doing there. But I think hard one to navigate for teams for sure. I think we touched on like commercial impact there, and a lot of the stuff that you were talking about. We're talking about team level, we're talking about process, we're talking about technology, and you're in a for-profit business that's operating as a recruitment function, so margins, commercial impact is going to be important from a joint talent perspective, but then also commercial impact for the client. Like, how do you see some of those things dovetailing together? What are some of the other examples that you've seen?
Yeah, I think talent acquisition, whether you are performing that as part of an RPO or whether you are embedded or you are internal, I don't think we talk enough about the commercial impact that the TA has on the business. You talk about all those little marginal gains. If you free up recruiter capacity, if you can give them 20% extra capacity either through automating admin tasks or removing parts of the process that aren't necessary, making them work more efficiently, you're getting you've got a team of 5 and you make each person 20% more efficient. It's like having an extra head count in your team without having to pay for an extra head. So you are delivering for the business better. You're delivering a better candidate experience, a better hiring manager experience. You are reducing empty chair time. Depending on the types of roles that you're recruiting, if you're a GTM recruiter and you're constantly having to bring in salespeople for the business, the longer that chair is empty, product isn't being sold or service isn't being sold. So, we talk about marginal gains, the impact that TA can have. The commercial impacts are huge, but we just don't shout about it. One of the things we talk about is, our time to hire was X. Our hiring manager engagement score or candidate NPS score was Y. Or this was I suppose this is more of a commercial metric, but our agency avoidance was this much, which is great. But if it's how that all ties together. If you're that GTM recruiter and you pat yourself on the back and say, I didn't use agencies at all this year, or 100% of my roles were direct fills. But if your time to fill and your empty chair time was massively long, it may have been, made more commercial sense to get an agency into who could fill the roles faster, so those seats are now generating revenue. And it's thinking about TA that way as well. And I think commerciality isn't something really that's taught a lot in TA teams.
Yeah, and there's something which I'm going to be banging the drum on, because I think, that you talked about that kind of period in 2021, that peak of recruiters. You then think of the drop in roles that were available, and were often any macro market movement then subsequently means impact on TA, subsequently means impact on hiring, in general. So yeah, I think so important to evidence it back. And, some of those examples which you shared, I think cost avoidance, right? We talk about agency savings. Well, great example of actually sometimes it's more cost effective to bring in an agency if the impact on the revenue of the org is going to be so stark. But equally, like savings versus recruitment agencies, for many organizations, as they're approaching single digits of agency reliance, well, that's been done, that's been completed. What's the next thing? What's the next area of commercial impact? And how can we evidence it back? And so crucial.
And I think that's one of the other things as well, is it's the because we've mentioned a couple of times on this call now about companies hiring a load of TA people, then hiring freezes, they lay off a load of TA people, and they try and bring them all back in again. What's the commercial impact of that? The commercial impact of one, bringing all these people in, it's expensive to hire. 2, it's expensive to let them go, and let's face it, it's not nice. I could say that as someone who has been laid off in the past before. But then the downtime in terms of upskilling a new team, the commercial impact of that is huge. I think it would make much more sense. And I'm going to say this because of the type of role I do and the type of company I work for, but build a hybrid function. You have got your core TA function that can manage about 50-60% of your demand that you're expecting over the next 12 months. The rest, bring an RPO in, because you might and again, a lot of companies, that demand is split out through over the year. Some companies, they hire really heavily in H1, and then H2 they die as a death because they overhire in H1. So how are you supposed to build a TA function like that? Do you build a one that's capable of hiring 200 hires over the course of the year, but they do 150 of them in the first half, and everyone's just sat twiddling their thumbs for the second half? Or do you under-resource that team based on what the second half is going to look like? Everyone kills themselves in the first, or just hybrid the team. It makes way more sense.
Yeah. And to play a little bit of Switzerland, but I broadly agree. But, also the option of running a team like an RPO, internal RPO, it's a cost center within the organization. Like, it's got its drawbacks, and we could speak to that for hours. But also from a pure business perspective, hey, we need to add 300 more growth heads than we were expecting. Like, if a customer came to you and said that, you wouldn't say, yeah, well, we'll just do it. I'm the exact same contract you're on now with the exact same people, and it won't cost you any more. It's just, it will cost more, and that's the reality. So, therefore, hey, in that cost center model, we're going to add headcount in order to be able to deal with that. Like, I think we need to be able to be balanced and, again, show that kind of cost back to the organization as well. And yeah, you talked about some of those kind of core recruiter metrics. I'd also take it all the way back to the beginning of this conversation where we were talking about metrics in the frame of enablement, right? And we're thinking about if your response time is X, and then so what? I think with so many of the core recruiting metrics, like, hey, our time to hire is this. What's the impact on the business? Does it matter that the time to hire is high? Does it matter that your cost per hire is high? Like in this scenario, in this context. So, yeah, I think tons to unpack there, and we've come through a good course of this without even mentioning generative AI, which is a bonus in the current market. But not to say that it would always be excluded for the podcast. It's fascinating. Yeah, and I think we're obviously having this conversation remote. I think one thing which is always really interesting, and we're seeing this kind of shift in the market at the moment, there's companies that either have really big real estate bills that, they want to make use of their brand new swanky offices that have just opened, that they've got a 10-year tenure on. You've then got, Meta taking their, office and paying off the lease and doing remote first still in the UK. What's your view? I know Join Talent was set up as a remote first organization. How do you think it's working? Do you see that changing? Pros, cons? I'd love to get your perspective on that to switch gear a little bit.
Yeah, so I love fully remote. I love it. One, because the obvious personal benefits. I get to take my daughter to school, I get to pick her up from school. I'm not spending an hour in the car on the way to work and an hour on the way back. I get more done. All these people that say there are more distractions at home than the office. There are way more distractions at the office. But in terms of building a culture and collaborating with people, I think you have to be very deliberate about how you go about it, because you're in an office, you miss those casual collisions where you'll bump into somebody, you'll have a conversation. So you have to go out of your way to speak to people more often, just to check in with people, whether that's just a quick WhatsApp message or, we quite like a lunch and learn, or we've got different hobby squads. So, I'm a geek, we jump on the Zoom, every couple of weeks with everyone else who loves the PS5, and we just chat FIFA and gaming, and you've got to be a bit more deliberate about it. But I also think with remote, if you set the right environment, you actually get to build better and more meaningful relationships with your co-workers than you do when you're in an office. There's people who I've sat next to in an office for years. I couldn't tell you the names of the kids. Whereas when you're on, over Zoom, I think COVID caught everyone this when we were all working from home. But you got to meet people's kids, their pets. You are inside their home, and I think people are generally just a little bit more relaxed when they're at home and they're on a Zoom. So you actually build better connections with people. And what I also think it's done as well is for the companies, it's established trust between team members and managers, and in a lot of companies there was always this thing about presenteeism. If you're not at your desk, where are you? When you're working fully remote, you kind of got to let that go, unless you're going to sit there and check everyone's team status every 5 minutes. So I think it's helped build trust as well. But you definitely got to be deliberate for it to work. You can't just tell everyone to work from home and think it will just work. It won't. You've got to be deliberate with it.
Casual collisions as well. I love that phrase. I think it's brilliant for what it is. And I think that's the bit which sometimes I do miss. And it is hard. And I think you can do it via Zoom, but I do feel that being connected to people, seeing people face to face does make a difference. But certainly, I'm of the same opinion of traveling in and spending time and distractions in the office. It's palpable.
Business benefits as well. Sorry, the business benefits, because companies always say we want to hire the best talent. If you are a fully remote business, you can hire the best talent. If you insist people need to be in the office at least 4 times a week, you are hiring the best talent within a 30-mile radius of your office.
Yeah.
So it's it's the business benefits as well.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also some really less hidden ones. I've seen some great reports recently on kind of carbon impact. And many big enterprises will have as part of their ESR, they'll have their kind of green impact and impact on carbon more generally. And, it's huge, the difference. And we're actually moving out of our office, as a company, because we were using it once a month, really, with most of the desks at full quota. And you'd walk in some days and there's 3 people, 100 desks, all those lights on. Like it feels like a waste of resources from that perspective, not least the actual capital of keeping bricks and mortar. But yeah, I'm still kind of decidedly on the fence in terms of like fully remote versus that hybrid piece, but we're certainly seeing it changing from an employer's perspective and then also an employee's perspective as well in terms of their wants, needs. Like certainly from a employer side, we're seeing a change at macro level of the frequency required in office when, jobs are being posted, advertised, etc. So yeah, it will be an interesting one to play out. But I'd say from this that you're saying joint talent's going to stay decidedly remote, particularly where you're all based from the people that I know as well. It'd be hard to bring you together too often.
Yeah. Oh, it's like a military mission trying to get everyone together in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. Nice. All right. And I think I'd love to just, and it's cliche and it's horrible, but I think, you've had a great career and lots of interesting stuff's happened so far. As you alluded to, probably only halfway through it, and pension ages keep changing, maybe only a third. But, some awesome kind of experience, like power of people building. What's one piece of careers advice that you'd take away and you'd like to pass on to somebody else?
I would say be curious, just always ask why. Because if you understand the why, then that helps you inform, the what, the how, the where, the when. If you understand why you do something a certain way or why something is important, then you can figure out better ways to do it. And it's something that stuck with me for a really long time. I'm 40 now. This piece of advice has stuck with me since I was 16. My part-time job was in a bakery in Morrison's whilst I was in sixth form. And I can't even remember what it was we were doing. And we were doing something. The bakery manager said to me, "Do you know why we do this?" I said, "No, I'm 16. No." And he was like, "Well, if you ask why you do something a certain way, then 1, you might figure out a better way to do it. 2, you'll understand how the rest of the business works and how it all links together. But 3, if the why you were doing it makes no sense, then don't do it anymore, and you save yourself the hassle." And that stuck with me. Like all this time, it stuck with me since I was 16, and there's been so many times throughout my career where just asking why and being curious it's just opened doors for me. So yeah, just be curious would be the big one for me.
Love that. You could get that on a t-shirt. And there's a hologram of a bakery manager that sits above you every time you're thinking about a problem, every time you're looking at recruitment data, just saying, why are you doing this? Simon Sinek's just finished his moonlighting career in a Morrison's bakery all those years ago, and gone on to great things. But no, it's been absolutely awesome having you on, and I think that kind of closing part really adds a thread to everything else that you've been talking about. And I think message for people listening is, when you're looking at the data, when you're looking at your own personal brand, when you're looking at the way in which you're structuring teams, the way in which you're approaching problems, actually, why are you doing it? Why does this matter? Why is this metric important for me, for the business, for the individual, for the candidate, for the hiring manager? So yeah, a lovely way to close, and absolute pleasure having you on, sir. And we'll get to be face to face a few times this year, no doubt.
Definitely. I look forward to your stand at Wreckfest. It's always it's always a hoot.
It's certainly built a reputation. We might have something a little bit more surprising in store this year, a little bit of a change in tone, but we're certainly going big, I can tell you that much. And that's one place where the whole community comes together, right? And certainly a place where the whole JT crew travel and that military operations complete. So definitely see you there, if not before.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Sam.
Nice one, dude.